If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum leadership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I love Anchor because it's really easy to use, very accessible to record your podcast, and has excellent sound quality. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoyed today's episodes. I would like to remind you that the 9th Facebook chat, which used to be on Zoom, but is now on Facebook because of Facebook having no time limit with the messenger rooms. It will be on August 21st, which is the third Saturday of the month, and it will be at 10 a.m. Pacific time zone, and it will go until 11:30 Pacific time zone in the morning. And if you want to be able to attend, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com, or you can contact me on Facebook on the Living with NLD page, or on my personal page. Jennifer Lynn Purcell is my full name, and I will add you to the group that is related to that after you come to the event. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed today's episode.
To access the testimonials, there are two ways. There's a testimonial page with the full quotes, and then there is a slideshow on the home page with excerpts of the longer ones and the short ones. On the last image of the testimonial quote with Julia's quote, you can click on it and it will take you to the testimonial page where it shows you all of them with the full quoted testimonials. I did it that way because I wanted it to be easier to read on the home page, since some of them were a little longer than a testimonial usually is. And then I wanted to make sure that you could see the whole testimonial on the testimonial page. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com, and I will try to show you how to access it. Thank you. Hope you're having a good weekend. Bye.
Hi, so today's episode will be an interview from Christina Cummins. She is a DBT therapist from New Jersey, and she will describe what that is in the episode, and this will be the first part of her interview. there will be several parts to her interview, and I hope you enjoy learning about her therapy and comparing it to CBT therapy as well, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. DBT stands for dialectical behavioral therapy. And we will be comparing those two throughout the interviews with her, episodes that talk about that interview, and also describing what DBT is and how it's different from CBT. And I hope you learned some new things about how DBT helps people with NLD and how it's different from CBT, and that this information will be helpful to you or to somebody that you know. So please enjoy this interview. Thank you. All right, so I am here today with Christina Cummins, and she will begin by introducing herself.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Christina. I'm a DBT therapist in New Jersey, and I work with a few niche populations, and one of them is individuals with NVLD.
Thank you, Christina. So I'm really glad that you wanted to do this interview and that you work with NVLD people, as that's one of the populations that I know needs help. And so I wanted to ask you how long you've been in DBT therapy and kind of what got you into it.
I have been in the mental health field for 11 years, and along the way, I found DBT. I was not looking for it, but it landed in my lap. And that started about 5 years ago. I always had a little bit of a grudge, for lack of a better term, against DBT because it's very intensive training. Mm-hmm. And it really turned me off. The work turned me off because as a therapist, you have to go through so much school and so much training. To think of getting done all of that to go back into training really turned me off for a long time. And I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I worked for an amazing nonprofit a few years back, and I had the opportunity to go through a very rigorous training and have that be incorporated into my working hours, which all of a sudden really lowered my defenses towards it, and thought, well, if I'm working, I'm getting paid, I can do this additional training because it's within my 40-hour work week. And I fell in love. I really wasn't expecting to, but I found a lot of use out of it. And in some of the clients that I was working with that weren't making any progress, I was able to bring these techniques and skills to them. And all of a sudden, there was change. There was movement forward where there was stagnation for so long. And of course, it's when you see something that works, you want to continue doing it. And I fell more and more in love with it as I went through and found more success.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That actually kind of makes me think of my podcast with starting it and not realizing that I would really like doing the research and love helping the people that have reached out to me as a result of it, like you and many others who gave me feedback on it and have told me how it's helping people that they know, and being able to realize that this is a new passion of mine. So
yes, it's like that unexpected positive feedback loop. Mm-hmm. you didn't go into it thinking that it would be there, and yet it's there, and so it motivates you forward. And that is exactly what happened here with me.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that. So the next question I was going to ask you about was just briefly, if you want to explain what DBT is for people who don't know about it.
Yeah, so DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, is a very specific style of therapy that combines the need for validation
Mm-hmm.
of how difficult life can be, how hard things are in this moment, and pushing the clients in this therapy towards change. And that is a constant balancing act that the therapist is always doing. How much to validate versus how much to change or push towards change, because that's really what we want. We want people to change. We want people to take control of their behavior, to change their lives in order to meet the goals that are most important to them. But we can't just always be in change mode. Sometimes we have to be in this sucks mode and just validating that and being with that. Um, so, dialectic, that idea, that word is when two things that seem opposite can be true at the same time. Like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I, I might need to validate someone quite a bit and just be with them where they are, and that will actually promote more change in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's lots of dialects, dialectical understandings in life, and some of it's really simple, like seeing the sunshine even though it just rained a couple minutes ago. So seeing the sunshine on a rainy day, or being mad at someone but loving them. And we're trying to harness that. There's always balancing points in life. Um, so it's DBT has a pretty structured therapy session, and you use a diary card, whether it's virtual, an app, or an actual piece of paper or a journal. You use this tool to go over how you felt throughout the week,
Mm-hmm.
and any specific targets, behavioral targets. So if someone is trying to reduce thoughts of really being disappointed in themselves, then you would hone right in on those thoughts and get right to the stuff that matters. And in addition to the diary card and the therapy session, there are skills sessions where people learn the DBT skills. This is another really um, awesome reason why it seems to click so well with people with NVLD, because there's solid and specific skills to use and try. It's no like, maybe I'll just kind of wing this or try this concept. It's very like step one, step two, step three.
Right.
And people love that. Um, and then finally, on the back end, something that's very important that makes DBT is um, the therapist having a consultation team.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that as a DBT therapist, I meet with a team of other DBT therapists every week, like with the exception of holidays and things like that. But we're very committed. We meet every week and we support each other in supporting our clients.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, when you were talking about the detailed process, that actually made me think of an NVLD mind and how they like very detailed things. So I can see how it works well with an NVLD person. And um, when you were talking about the diary, made me think of my own therapy, where my therapist, she has me do basically think of homework for the next week. And I guess that's a little similar to a diary, where you would be thinking of homework that you would want to work on. And that's been helpful because I try to pick something to work on while in between sessions, basically. And it's kind of fun sometimes. Like one of the examples, or one of the homework assignments was trying to pick up on emotions more in an emphasis of tone with conversation. So I listened to a YouTube of Disney clips, and I did Cinderella, so that was kind of cool. And it was fun because I'm pretty good with my audio memory, and so I can recite really well with the words, but it was like, okay, I'm not reciting just with the words, I have to pick up on the emotion.
The tones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great homework assignment, by the way. Like, kudos to your therapist. That's a really good one. I'm like filing that one away, and I'm gonna use it.
Yeah.
There's often homework in DBT, especially in skills. So how that looks, just a little bit more. Someone will generally go to 2 sessions a week in order to learn all the skills and start therapy for some period of time. Sometimes skills are taught individually, often they're taught in the group session. People with NVLD, it's like a mixed bag. And I ask that folks reflect on what's worked best for them. Sometimes group skills or group teaching environments have not been really beneficial in the past. So we would go towards individual teaching sessions for those skills. And usually people are coming into this knowing exactly how many weeks they're going to make that bigger commitment of doing twice a week appointments to learn all those skills, something like 12 or 16 weeks.
Yeah, that does make sense because I know before I was with the therapist that I have now, I used to do group therapy and individual therapy. And so that was, I think that was, it was either, might have been twice a week or I did both on the same day. I forget now because that was a while ago. But that felt like a bigger commitment because I had both. But it was nice because I got to know the other girls that were in the group and got to see the different stories of them and got to appreciate the differences between mine and theirs. So it does help knowing, okay, which one's going to help me better, group or individual. And sometimes it depends on the kind of therapy, whether it's talk therapy or something like psychodrama. I've did a little bit of that too. But I know one thing I want to ask you, I know DBT can help NLD, but what else can it help?
It was designed to help highly suicidal people when it was first created. It was designed to help people with borderline personality disorder or strong features of that disorder. So people who have self-harm behaviors, chronic suicidal ideations, and as time's gone on, it's been studied in more and more settings, more mental settings. So other diagnostic criteria that people would meet aside from those very extreme, very severe cases. And there's one common factor in the people that it really helps. For those that it really helps, talking about something and gaining insight into it doesn't lead to feeling better. You can, for some people, just talking about something, getting it out, getting it off your chest. That leads to gaining insight and course adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have a really hard time course adjusting, even when they know exactly what's going on. So that person that says, I know exactly what I want to stop doing or I want to start doing, and I've tried and tried and tried and I can't do it, that's the person that I would recommend trying DBT.
That makes sense, because it sounds like they probably would need to do a different behavior or something.
You got it. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's like trying new things,
Mm-hmm.
even though you're pretty sure they might not work, even though you don't actually want to do them. So you learn the new skills and then you try the new skills, even though it's a huge pain and it's all a gamble, all in effort for achieving those goals that um, that you really want to be moving towards, but something is standing in your way. Something about your behavior, your current behavior is standing in your way.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the mottos in DBT is that our minds no longer control us, we control our minds.
Ooh.
And therefore, we control our behavior.
I like that.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about when you were saying trying new things, because I think NBLD has pushed me to do that many times since I've been diagnosed when I was in college, because whenever I need to tackle a challenge, I need to be able to look at it and be like, okay, I may need to get at this in different ways that I haven't before, or do something that I've done before but slightly different, be able to make it be easier for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that constant course adjusting, like I mentioned earlier, the constant course adjusting, it's very difficult. A lot of people find difficulty with this. And having some support in coming at it from a different perspective, from that skills perspective, in trying something that is not where your mind would have automatically gone. Trying something that is, out of the creator of DBT. Her name is Marsha Lenehan. Trying something from Marsha Lenehan's perspective instead of from our own perspective can really help us to get out of those funks that we're in when we are trying to figure out like how is this going to work out best? How am I going to make this easier? Maybe not really easy, but easier for myself.
Yeah, and I don't know if this happens with any of your NVLD clients, but I know sometimes for me, I can be, and this is something I'm still working on, I can be dismissive of trying something in a different way because I don't always think it's going to work. And I go to being the literal part of NLD being black and white with the extreme of it. No, it's not going to work, when I should just be open of, oh, maybe it will.
It's something that I see in my NVLD clients, and it's something that I see in my non-NVLD clients. Like, I think that it is part of like the human condition to be like, okay, I know this is going to take effort. And do I really believe that there's going to be an equal outcome?
Mm-hmm.
And we can sometimes logic ourselves into saying, no, there's not going to be an outcome there when we don't really know. But our logic is telling us that, and it might make a lot of sense. And still, um, a DBT skill is called being willing. It's just simply doing what works, which means trying new things to figure out what works and what doesn't work, is one of the hardest skills
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to see at times, to say to yourself at times, oh, that's not going to work. I'm not going there. It's not going to be worth the effort.
Yeah, that does make sense, because I can think of times where I've been trying to get a challenge, like driving is probably one of the hardest ones for me, where I try to with the visual spatial, I try to focus on my surroundings, but also not run into anything. And it's a little nerve wracking. And I know that I'm not the only one that gets nervous when I drive. So,
Yeah, like there is that mix of looking far enough out
mm-hmm.
so that you are really like in the big picture of driving, but also having to know if there is like a pedestrian just to your left.
Yes.
And the skills to do that are, it's a juggle, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. The big picture and the little picture.
Mm-hmm.
So also a question I want to ask you was, how does DBT differ from CBT?
Yeah. Cognitive behavioral therapy is really based in the mental restructuring of our thoughts, how you speak to yourself, that running dialogue that a lot of us don't even realize that we have.
Mm-hmm.
There is, for so many people, a almost constant running, um, not dialogue, but monologue of what you're saying to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
While thoughts are very important with DBT, we view them as another behavior. And DBT has a huge focus on behavior, which is a big difference from CBT, where it's mostly about those thoughts, those cognitions. Um, so, with the greater focus on all behaviors, including thoughts, like getting up and going to work, even if you're having thoughts of you don't feel like it, in CBT, you might focus on changing those thoughts. And in DBT, we might eventually get there, but it would be about in that moment, getting up, acting opposite to those thoughts and going to work anyway. And that's the true target. The true win is getting up and going to work anyway.
That makes sense, because I know I've worked with creating some better self-talk for myself as well, and making more positive words, and um, trying to make myself think better about myself and love myself more over the years of therapy, which isn't always easy, depending on how you think about yourself.
It can be really difficult. Um, I don't want to get too tangential here, but when you are living in a neurotypical world, which we all are, you're kind of getting the invalidation that something is wrong, something is off, your brain's not working like others, you're not quite like everyone else, are you? Um, from every direction, from media, from school, from peers. And I'm sure there's just so many realms of living that I'm leaving out here. And all of that goes, it works surprisingly well. I wish it didn't work so well at creating negative self talk for people with NBLD. So many of my clients struggle with I'm a freak. I'm such a loser. I wish my brain was different. Why was I born like this?
Mm-hmm.
All of these things that are just like, it's heartbreaking, honestly. when you hear these people that have amazing things to contribute to the world, but because their brains worked a little differently, they just got these messages over and over and over again that their differences were not okay and were inconvenient or, just different from the norm. This self-talk is really severely affected. And so in DBT, we view that as a behavior and try to actively change that. And we would call that type of self-talk a myth. So that is a myth that you are saying to yourself. A myth being something that is not true. Just because you have NBLD doesn't make you a freak. It doesn't make you useless. It's a really common theme I see among the people I work with. And it kind of, I don't know if you can tell, but it gets me a little revved up because it really is, it's like stealing from all that they could potentially be contributing to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate with that because I'm sure it's true with not just people with NLD, but any learning challenge, as I like to call it, because, or like you were saying, nonverbal learning differences of disability.
Yeah.
And I like that because it is really, you think differently than a neurotypical. And that is true with somebody with autism or Asperger's or other ones as well. And ADHD also. And that they, I know for me, I've had some of those words in my mind too, where, oh, I'm, I don't know if I've had a freak, but maybe outcast. And, like, I know sometimes I've thought where this just made me laugh because I was thinking of something I said in a previous podcast episode where I was talking about emotions and emojis and how sometimes I don't know what an emoji means. And I'm afraid to ask some of my neurotypical friends that may not know about NLD. And I'm like, I'm thinking their response would be like, she doesn't know what that emoji means? Like, is she not in or something like that? And so like, that's kind of something like I'm a freak because like, you would think, oh, you would know that. So usually if they don't know I have NLD, I Google it to avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that's like, well, is this supposed to come naturally? Other people get it naturally. Why don't I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's emojis that I don't know and I don't get. And I occasionally have to ask, like, what does that mean? I remember, I won't go into a story, but I mean, yeah. And here's the difference though. I haven't been getting all my life, like what you're not picking up on that. You can't read that facial expression. You don't know what they're trying to say to you, even though they said those words. That's not really what, so on and so forth. I haven't been getting those messages all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So my anxiety surrounding asking about an emoji is really, really low because there's no fear there about having a deficit in that area or being different in that area. And I think that's what creates the fear in asking for people, and not just emojis, but like can you repeat those instructions again?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there any way that you could write that out for me? Or so on and so forth, in asking any question, because people with NBLD have gotten those messages for a long time about how it is abnormal to have to ask as much as they're asking.
Yeah, I agree with you with those sort of questions. Or like if somebody says to you, why do you have that face? And you're like, what face? Like, I don't, that's often what I would say. I'm like, I don't know what my face looks like. Like, I'm not looking in a mirror. And even if I was, I would probably be changing it because I would, I mean, that's just probably what somebody would do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know when I was taking a test for trying to be diagnosed with NLD, they had me looking at facial expressions and trying to say what they were without any labels on the pictures of them. And I was like, I'm not sure what they are. Like I was clearly guessing. So that I can relate to that too. And as I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you, my audience. Please know that just because I have a podcast doesn't mean that I'm perfect in every way and don't make mistakes. I make them every day and try to learn from them. I hope that this podcast helps you feel included, not alone, inspired, safe, and encouraged to make your life a little easier for you every day or chance you have the opportunity to. I would like to hear from you, especially if you have topics that you would like to know more about relating to NLD. I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. Also, please email me if you would want to be interviewed on this podcast or if you need support with something related to NLD. I'm always happy to help in any way I can. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will talk to you next Friday. Bye.